So it is January. The wintertime holidays are over, and you could be sitting here wondering, what type of project should you be working on in January? Well, I have a few ideas for you if you're looking for help, and I also have a big idea not to do if you find yourself tempted. So let's get into it. I'm wearing my baby it's cold outside sweatshirt, and I can guarantee you it is in fact very cold. I've also got a blanket. So if you don't know, I live in Iowa, and it is January is definitely cold. We have a ton of wind. It gets very bitter, and it will stay this way for several months. So my winter, could be quite a bit longer than yours. I feel like we've already been in winter for a good solid month or so, even though technically it only started a few weeks ago. Sometimes it can be a rush if you have done a lot of projects, like if you were doing Christmas projects or, something like that, or doing some Christmas decor, and you were really in like full swing making projects during November, December, and now you feel like that big lull, and maybe you don't really know where to go from there. This could also be for you if you are newer to crochet, aren't really sure what you like making yet, you don't have a ton of experience, like the different stitches and stuff, but you really haven't developed it enough to know what your preferences are. Now, the first option for wintertime makes may seem obvious, but it really boils down to the fact that for a lot of us here, it is super cold and gets dark early. Places like this in the Midwest, like you can't be outside. Like there's no outside activities going on right now. Like you are pretty much forced to be inside. If you want exercise, you have to like get on a treadmill or an exercise bike or something like that, because it is just not happening otherwise. So faced with the reality that we are hunkering down a little bit more right now, I would say now is a fantastic time if you have wanted to work on like a blanket, a larger project like that. It is a great time because in warmer months, we don't always want all of that blanket on our lap while we're crocheting. If you're like sitting there sweating and you've got the air conditioner and the fan pointed at you and it's all on you, that's not ideal. And especially, I know a lot of us will make larger blankets out of acrylic yarn because it's a little more economical. And yeah, that stuff, it can make you sweat. It's not like super breathable. So that is my first tip. Like if you have a large project, work on that right now because you've got the time, you won't be outside, and you can probably leave your project in a big basket or bin next to your chair. We don't always have like tons of people over during this time frame. And with the holidays being over, so, it's probably okay if you got a tote sitting by your chair for 2 months. But take advantage of the downtime, the slowness of the time of year, and the fact that you're cold. Like you're getting to take that blanket for a test drive while it's on your lap while you're making it. But since we're talking about blankets, I want to kind of skip to the part where I tell you what not to make in January. So I got caught up and swept up a few years back into the temperature blanket craze. And they're cool, don't get me wrong, super cool. It seemed like all of my friends were doing them, and it just seemed neat. I came up with my own plan. I was going to do granny squares. I was going to do the high and the low. I picked out a color scheme that was totally personal to me. It wasn't like the Roy G. Biv, because I knew I wouldn't really put that up in my house. It was like, more like autumnal colors, stuff like that. And I worked very hard on the prep, and I got basically a month and a half in, and I couldn't stand working on it because I am not good at doing tedious things. So a temperature blanket requires a tremendous amount of attention to detail, and some people have different ways of coping with this, like where they might wait a couple weeks and write down the temperature every day, or go in like twice a month and write down the temperatures for the first 2 weeks and the last 2 weeks, and then go in and crochet those. I think most people struggle the most when trying to work on it daily, and that was definitely me. And then I would beat myself up, and then I'd have more rows to do on the weekend, and it just became like this whole thing that wasn't pleasant, and I started hating. So it may be the perfect project for you, But if you are a person who likes to see things completed quickly, who likes to see a lot of progress quickly, who has a good attention to detail, who likes the idea of documentation, it could be a great project. But if you are like me and apparently a bunch of other people, it might not be for you. It looks cool. It really does, and they are. But I wasted a ton of time, energy, and unfortunately money on yarn on a project that never saw past 6 weeks. So I will link for you my temperature blanket playlist if you want to see like how hopeful I started out and then how it was tanking, and then there was like a huge gap, and then it was like boom, hey, I can't do this. So I will link that for you. And I go into more detail on a bunch of stuff there, but that is my big don't for January. If you have doubts or reservations about what it takes to do one, like just thinking they're cool is not enough, I don't think, to really get you through a year of dedication to that blanket. So that's about the only don't I have, except for the normal don'ts, like don't take on a project that's too big for what you want to do. Don't take on projects for people that you don't want to do projects for. Don't do projects that are popular but you don't particularly like. Don't do those. Do what you love, do what fits you need. So let's get back into other great projects to do in January. So let's go with yarn textures right now. So now is a fabulous time to get into if you have a velvet yarn in your stash. Velvet yarn can be difficult to work with. I have a video on it. I will link for you. It is an older video, so the production value is a little questionable, but the technique that I used in that video, 100% I still stand behind. I still think it worked great. So I will link that because velvet yarn is great to do a little project out of right now. Although I don't personally like using velvet yarn for any headwear. I have tried it numerous times and I feel like it has a really hard time holding its shape. Like anything that where it might get stretched out, I don't think is great for velvet yarn, but now is a great time to do those. If you have any yarn that has a halo on it, I'm thinking like Karen Colorama. I've done like a fun scarf with that. What is that other one? Like the Karen latte cakes, things like that have the fuzz. If you have any of that, like Huga yarn, I think is what it is, where it's like all very soft and furry, now is a great time for that. And of course your wools. Wools and wool blends are great fabric or great fibers to work with during January, especially if you want to do some like smaller little projects, cowls, hand warmers, tons of little stuff that might just be good for you to work for yourself, which brings me to the next point. And January is so often filled with people's desire to try to better and improve themselves, which there is nothing wrong with that. I feel like I have tons of stuff I need to improve on and I'm constantly working on. But a lot of that does seem to be arbitrarily picked out, and a lot of it is health, like exercise, diet related. And what I want to suggest is that it is a great time for you to either start building skills. Like it's not like you even have to do a project, but if you are brand new to crochet, just get some cheap yarn and work on some different stitches, work on some different squares of different stitches, and just do that until the yarn runs out. Like do things to make you feel more comfortable than moving on to a larger project. The other thing that I think is great this time of year is instead of like necessarily focusing on some of those like diet and exercise type things, and the education would be to really focus on like rejuvenating yourself at this point in time. So, the holidays can be very stressful. Sometimes we take on a lot of extra responsibilities with our job or kids' school or, tons of different things. And you have extra family engagements. Maybe you have been making a bunch of gifts or ornaments or whatever. And now is a great time to really take a few moments, think about some projects that you could like really treat yourself to? Like, do you have some really good yarns that you've been holding on to and haven't wanted, you know, like you just don't know what, like you want it to be a good project, like something you love? That would be a great idea, but like pampering type of projects. So anything that is going to help you rejuvenate, anything that is going to help you feel refreshed. So whether that is apparel pieces, maybe it is making yourself a bunch of like makeup removing cloths. I don't know what it is for you. You know, maybe it's like a sleeping mask. It could be anything. But what speaks to you? Like what nourishes you? What really makes you feel comfortable and cared for? Those projects, I say, are great to put to the top of the list, because taking care of yourself and recognizing your needs is not only, well, it's super important, but it's also way harder to do than you would think, especially if you are someone who has spent a lot of their life putting other people's needs in front of yours and have a hard time even recognizing your needs. Another great project for January is doing some wool or wool blend accessories. So like I said, it is going to be fairly cold for me for a while still, and I have a couple more shawls I want to make. I want to make a brown shawl for myself. I have several and I wear them to work quite frequently. I like that I can have them on, and then if I'm having like a hot flash moment, I can take it off. You know, it's not like having an extra sweater or a vest or something like that. I can just throw it on the back of my chair and, you know, be done with it until it's time. So I know like there are a few colors I want to do in wool yarns that I have, and now is an excellent time. Myself personally, I prefer to do a virus shawl. That is my really my favorite pattern. I love how it looks. I feel like it has awesome like boho vibe to it, and that's something that can be used, like that pattern can be used any time of year because it is very lacy, but I feel like it just makes a big impact. And you know, if you're using a wool or a wool blend yarn, you know, it's still going to be warm when you're wearing it, even if it is lacy. I find a lot of times this is the only time of year that I use some of my thicker like 5 and 6 weight yarns. So just out of preference, I prefer smaller weight yarns. I find they're a lot easier on my hands and all that jazz, but we can talk about that some other day. Now is great if you have, like I said, maybe not so much the 5 weights, but like definitely the 6 weights, where you know, they make a big chunky cowl, they make a big chunky beanie, things like that, where, you know, when you're freezing, like that's going to be very comfortable and warm. And they're generally, because it's such thick fabric, they're kind of heavy, they just feel super cozy, and they actually work up pretty darn quick. I mean, you want to make sure you are definitely using a pattern that calls for a 6 weight yarn. If you're using 6 weight yarn, like don't use one that's calling for a worsted weight, Aran weight, 4 weight, and then make a beanie out of 6 weight yarn and then wonder why it is gigantic, because that is why you didn't use the right weight of yarn. But yeah, do a little research, find out, search for patterns, you know, if it's like 6 weight yarn, beanie pattern, start there, because that's just a fun, quick project, and you can definitely make some use out of it and have a few little accessories still in the next couple months. If you received any yarn for Christmas, I did. And I will link that video for you up here if you want to see what I got from my mother-in-law for Christmas. It was all yarn. I think that is a great place to start because it is something that is new. You're generally going to be a little more jazzed up about it. And, you know, it's just sometimes more fun to dig into something new while it is fresh and you have that excitement, where if you put it on your shelf for a year or two, you know, that does dwindle and you don't have that, you know, initial excitement. So it is a great time, if you received any yarn, to start with some of that. So this next one is pretty personal to me. If you are in Iowa, it could also apply to you, but I know there are also events like this all over the country. So last April, I went to the Des Moines Spinners and Weavers Guild Fiber Fest, and it was so fun. I have a video about that. I will link that, blog post, all that stuff. And I picked up some really cool stuff, and it was all nicer stuff, like hand-dyed, handmade. I'm just going to grab this one because it's right here. This was a fun sock weight yarn right here. Don't think I have my readers, so I'm not going to be able to tell you too much about it. You can see there's like a fun sparkle. It's like brown and plum and pink. So I know that this Fiber Fest is going to be happening again in the end of April. So now is a good time for me to use up some of those yarns that I bought there last year. And it's just kind of a great way so that you don't feel guilty about buying things because you're like, okay, I did use that. It's also great for you to use the yarn because then you can be like, oh my gosh, I really love this particular yarn dyer or yarn spinner, and I want to make sure that when they come, you know, they're at the show, that I pick up a couple more skeins of theirs. Or you might be like, I got to make sure I don't buy, you know, whatever it is. So I know that one is a little bit more vague and a little bit, like I said, it would depend on your time of year, but there are several Spinners and Weavers Guild. Like I want to say there might be 2 or 3 in Iowa. And I am sure if you were in a state that is a little more populated, I'm sure you might have more than that, but check it out and check and see if there's a Fiber Fest. And it doesn't have to be like a guild. There are Fiber Fest a lot of times. Like I think in Iowa, I wonder if it's like February that there's a big Fiber Fest in Winterset. If you know the answer and you're from Iowa, put it down below so everyone can see that, please. But again, it's a good time to just know like, oh, okay, I should probably use this before I purchase more from there and bring it into my house. And then the very last thing is just going to be if you have any birthdays, any type of spring holidays coming up and you want to work on any type of like apparel or decor or gifts or anything like that for upcoming holidays. A few years back, I had made a cousin of mine. It was like a crocheted chocolate bunny, and she puts it out at Easter, and it's pretty cute. I will see if I can find the pattern that I used for that because I can't remember anything about it, and it was definitely before I started YouTube, so I know I don't have a video or a blog post. Get that done now, and then as it gets closer, you don't have to be as frantic, or you can worry about other details about the holiday like food or you know, whatever. I have to say a huge thank you to everyone who has been popping over onto my blog and reading articles. I don't know who is reading, but I can see like the post views have gone way up this past month. So I just want to take a minute and say thank you. I appreciate the traffic over there. And yeah, I love that. Thank you. And I also wanted to let you know that the next video that comes out is going to be a Katya yarn haul. If you are on my email list, you would have had the chance to see a video about this already because what was it, my December video, I showed a few different things to my email subscribers, but one of them was I like blind opened the box and just saw what was there. So to get you up to speed, I was contacted by a representative from Katya Yarns because I had signed up for their affiliate program through AWIN. And they were kind of asking me a few questions, and I was like, yeah, go ahead, send me a PR box. And I did not have, I mean, sometimes you get emails and you just don't know what to take seriously, what not to, blah, blah, blah. And they sent me a box and it like knocked my socks off. So my next video, I am going to go through that with you a little more mindfully, I think is how I would say that. Go through the yarn slowly and really just show you every detail about them that I can, because Katya Yarns is one that I had heard of so many times, but I had never actually had any in person. So I'm going to go through, take my time and just show you everything I can about these yarns, and maybe even, I'm going to try to even have a few ideas like what I want to use these yarns for. Like I said, it was a PR box. I did not order it. I was not paid to do it or anything like that either, just so you know. But it was just more so that I think they want you to experience the yarn so that you will recommend it to other people. I'm excited to have that opportunity and really look at some projects I might want to make for myself. Well, that I definitely want to make for myself, because I kind of thought, it almost felt like a Christmas gift coming to me, and I just really wanted to make some things that were a little nicer and more special than some of the other stuff that I might make for myself. That is my plan, so definitely come back next week and check that out if you are at all curious about Katya yarns. Thank you for talking yarn with me. We'll see you next week. Bye.